So hello today, I'm with Peter Ellington, and Peter is the founder of Triple Bottom Line, which is an accounting business based in Norwich, which is an ethical accounting practice, not only looking at profit and people, but also taking the planet into consideration. He's also an associate professor at the University of East Anglia, and he's the financial director of Permanent Publications that publishes Permaculture magazine. And so, Peter, today I want to talk about UBI. Can you tell our YouTube listeners and beyond, what is UBI? What does it stand for? What does it do?
Okay, Maddy, thanks for inviting me to talk about this. So UBI is, as in most things, there's a lot in the name. So UBI stands for Universal Basic Income, and it's a scheme that has been trialled a few times over history, and it effectively gives everybody a basic income, and some people mute that around, say, £1,000 every month for every grown-up in a particular area or in a country or in a district.
Okay, and I know that it was trialled in Canada, for example, and trialled successfully with beneficial results that benefited not only the economic picture of the community it was trialled in, but it was shown to have social benefits very much so. So can you talk to me? Yes, sorry.
It's trialled in Finland as well.
Yeah.
And there's a lot being discussed about it generally at the moment. There was a really good article yesterday, which I was invited to speak to in the East Anglian Daily Times and the Norfolk EDP, Eastern Daily Evening Times, and they mentioned a few trials that had occurred and been very successful. But they actually said that the Pope had been suggesting that we might need a scheme like UBI, and he is pointing out that there's a lot of money being pumped into economies around the world to help them survive, to stimulate them, because maintaining the economy, maintaining the flow of money is what an economy is about. We all benefit from those pounds or dollars or francs or whatever moving francs in all the euros, moving around the economy. And with the pandemic, money's tended to stop, and we need to keep it flowing again. And so we've got a furlough scheme, we've got a self-employment scheme, and we've got a lot of, sorry about the noise in the background, we've got a lot of bounce back loans and CBIL loans being available. And the argument is we've got to put money into the economy. And why do we think that entrepreneurs are the best people to give it to? So I'm not saying that what's happened is completely bad, because entrepreneurs do make work for everybody, keep the money going, and it's a way of distributing money through the economy. So if a business owner receives a grant to employ people, he'll employ people, he'll use that grant to pay them. If a self-employed person receives a grant, he'll spend that money keeping his supply chains going, one would hope. If another business owner gets a bank loan, then he's going to use that bank loan, hopefully, to keep his business afloat, to spend that money in the economy. These are good things.
Right. So as you rightly pointed out to me, if you're 66, you're in receipt of a universal basic income, which is called a state pension. So if we take this and said, right, okay, we're going to apply this to every member of the population, adult working member, regardless of age and regardless of employment. This is not an unemployment benefit. This is a universal benefit for all. What kind of things happen? I mean, because it doesn't exclude working, does it?
No, that's right. So, as you said, a good example of universal basic income is what every 66-year-old who qualifies for state pensions obtains. So I'm saying that it's part of a mix. And just let me finish off what we're just saying about the current situation, in that with the loans part of the scheme, there's apparently billions of pounds of loans that have been given that are potentially fraudulent. And we're hearing stories about people that have taken these loans and they're using them to buy properties where properties are cheap in the UK to then make more profits for themselves. And that can't be fair or correct, because these are people that are moneyed already. And then there's a lot of people in the employment scheme or the self-employment scheme that just missed out because they didn't have a pay slip at the right time or didn't have a tax return in the right tax. And then their only recourse is universal credits. So why are we trusting entrepreneurs with the money? And the UBI, we trust everybody. And we completely change the mindset of how we see money, because money becomes something that everybody has and everybody's entitled to because they're human, not because they're particularly good at something or they're entrepreneurial, but because they exist. And homeless people get it, you and I get it, but educated people get it, people that haven't spent so much time getting qualifications also get it. But it changes people's mindsets. I believe that at the moment, I'm seeing a lot of our clients that are setting up businesses to help their communities and the environment. And they have to consider how they're going to make money every day. And so for a lot of people, the first question for them is, how am I going to get food on the table? How am I going to pay my rent, especially for our younger generation? And having a UBI of, say, £1,000 a month, but if we can afford for 10 or 20 billion pounds to be borrowed by entrepreneurs and sort of like disappear out of the economy, surely we could afford 20 billion pounds to give everybody a universal basic income. And what the effect is, I believe, is that people then have some choices about, they don't go to work because they have to. They go to work because they choose to, because they've got the basics covered. All right, I know having £1,000 a month isn't going to buy you, a brilliant house or enable you to go on holidays for weeks on end. But it does enable you to have some choices about how you're going to spend your time. It gives you a little bit of a security blanket. So you're not a wage slave, or you're not a slave to having to get money. And so you can choose how you want to live your life. It just turns the whole capitalism system around. We've still got capitalism. We've still got people making consumption choices. We've still got people deciding to use their universal basic income to help them support their own business ideas and helps them potentially to be entrepreneurs. But it's much more fairer, and it enables people that might not have been able to even consider being an entrepreneur to enter into that situation. They have a pet project that they think, well, I've got a basic income now. I'll think about developing my idea for a business idea. Or I really, really wanted to help other people and help in my community. Or I really want to go into organic veg production in my allotment. And I've now got the money so that I can survive, and I can go and plant food, and I can probably supplement my diet by decent food. And it just completely changes all our life choices.
And another thing that the research did show was that people, instead of being utterly focused around their economic survival, were then able to offer with more security, more support to more vulnerable neighbours. They became more engaged in community, in their local community activities. It just created a different kind of community glue that was much more positive and mutually supportive within that town. So it has this interesting effect.
That's right. Well, as you know, Maddy, we've talked about this a lot, but I'm doing a doctorate in education, which I'm towards the end of. And my thesis is a critical realist piece. And I've been studying Roy Basker, who's the founder of critical realism. And he said that we're in a crisis in the 4 planes of human being. And the 4 planes are at the worldwide planetary level, the Anthropocene, the fact that we think that we're separate from the environment. We all know that, reading Permaculture magazine and so on. And then at the individual level, we're seeing narcissism, people like Trump and people thinking that he's talking sense, or thinking that that it's more important to be seen as powerful than it is to talk sense or factually. And then in between the individual level and the global level, you've got the how we interact individually, and then the structure of society. Roy Basker said that we've got crisis in all of those levels, but they're all also all interconnected. And so if we want to be concerned about the planet and climate change and the environment, it potentially starts at an individual level and looking after ourselves. And if our primary motive is about making money, and let's face it, neoliberal capitalism that we've had since Thatcher and Reagan has promoted the I'm all right, Jack principles. I know before Thatcher, I don't remember seeing people begging in the street and homeless in the 70s. I can't remember that. Maybe I just was privileged and lived in the wrong cities, but I don't remember that. And I don't remember it being acceptable then. But then things have seemed to change, and with neoliberal capitalism, I'm not anti-capitalism, by the way. I believe in stakeholder capitalism. But the neoliberal capitalism is promotes people saying, well, I've got to look after myself first, and I have to come first. And I think a UBI just changes the stack. It puts things another way around. And so you're not thinking, well, I must survive, I must make money, and I don't care about my next door neighbour, because me making money is more important than me having a relationship with my next door neighbour. And so I do think that having a UBI where we've got this money going to everybody and everybody's seen as equal, rather than, oh, you're a business person, so you deserve money. Oh, you haven't set up a business, so therefore you're not deserving of money. That whole concept just seems alien to being a human, or it's alien. It's not human. It's not humanity. And I think changing the way that we look at money in that way is, and we can afford it. As I keep saying, we're splashing money out in bank loans that we as taxpayers are ultimately going to have to pay. Either this generation or the next generation, because we move it in bonds to future generations. But somebody's got to pay for those. And why wouldn't we trust everybody? And by trusting everybody, we just change the way that people treat each other. And at that fundamental level of the 4 planes of human being, we start changing ourselves as an individual level. It starts changing our communities. We start then thinking about the structure of society and who's got the money and who hasn't got the money, and whether it's fair. And if you feel passionate about it, you've got enough time and money to do something about it, because you're not a wage slave. And then it leads to us being more aware and cognizant of what we're doing to our surroundings and how we are and where we are in the world, and the fact that we can imagine that we're separate from the world, i.e. the Anthropocene. So I think it's a start to, it could be a start to a new beginning.
And I think it's important that you do say that you're not blanket anti-capitalism, you're stakeholder capitalism, and that you're not an associate professor that could be criticised for having sat in an ivory tower for all of your professional career. You know, you've worked for blue chip companies before you set up your ethical accountancy practice and started your academic career. So you've got this portfolio of experience that means that you can look at this from many different perspectives.
Yeah, well, as you know, Maddy, I got to the point at 50, like lots of people, had a midlife crisis. And what I see now, it's interestingly, I was interviewing somebody for my doctorate, and they were talking about dualism. And because we were talking about how students learn and how they are at universities today, and whether they could partake in the conversations that are going on within their profession. So I'd identified that if you talk to a young accountant and say, how do you think accountants are going to save the planet? Which is something that Prince Charles has been saying and other people have been saying for quite a while, because a lot of it's about measurement. He said the issue is that young people, and a lot of adults too, like to see things as black or white. They like to choose a side, and they like things to be wrong or right, or one thing or another. And you never feel as confident as when you know that things are black and white. And there's some research done in the 60s that says that you go from a stage of things being dualist and black and white, or right or wrong, and one side or another side, and then you move into chaos, and that's a very difficult point. And then you move into critical thinking, which is where critical realism is, for example. And you try and look at the issues that are facing society. You know, I was reading an article in the Eastern Daily Times yesterday, and the guy was saying, you know, we need to open up the economy, we need to go for herd immunity. Kind of, okay. And then he was saying, there's more people dying of cancer-related things than they are of COVID. Okay, well, yeah, you've got a point there. But let's go and look a little bit more at the reality of this and say, well, why are they dying of cancer in the first place? And if you take it back right further, it's because we're removing biodiversity from soil. And we've not got the immune systems that we need to fight cancers or anything. So if we're going to have a debate and say that we shouldn't be protecting people that are vulnerable to coronavirus, then and say that we should be aware that all these people that aren't getting treatments for their issues and cancers and other illnesses, then let's go and look at the causes of all of these things. Let's have a proper debate and try and work out what's happening. And of course, that then you have to then start entertaining the fact that it's an open system, that it's moving all the time, and there's never a right answer, and any knowledge and any solutions are always fallible. But we live in a black and white society. We live in a situation where the government makes a decision and it has to be right. And then what they'll do is try and cover up that they were wrong or right. And a lot of people like that because they accept that things are one thing or another. And a lot of people need actually a breakdown or a breakthrough to get to that other side, to go through the chaos. And we actually need systems. And I was talking to somebody just the other day that I was talking about the specific point about dualism, going to chaos, going into then critical thinking. And I'm not saying that people don't critical. It's not just as simple as that, is it? But they were saying that they knew somebody that was helping people transition in that way through dance. And, and then the Chancellor says, we don't need music and we don't need theatre. These are the essences of our society that help us to transform. Yeah. And it's so sad that we've even got a Chancellor that thinks, that's given some keys actually, because it's good to have people like that, but you need somebody else to balance them out and say, no, I'm sorry, but you're wrong. We need culture. They help us survive. So,
absolutely.
that was a long.
So we go, let's hope that COVID, which is this grand chaos crisis, will be something that we can navigate through in the process that you described, to see the world with new eyes and come up with new systems and implement what's proven to work on a small scale like UBI. So thank you so much for talking to me today, Peter. As usual, really enjoyable, and hope to have another conversation with you soon.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.